Not all discoveries can be easily explained. All over the world, there are scientific and archaeological mysteries that even the best minds in the world can't get to the bottom of, no matter how much time they spend studying them. And the questions they have about them might never be answered. We love those mysteries, though, because they mean we can make exciting videos like this one, full of wonders old and new. How would we cope in the modern world without our smartphones? You might even be using one to watch this video right now. Phones haven't always been available, though. They used to be attached to landlines. And if you follow that idea back even further, they were little more than long pieces of string with cups at each end, used both to hear and to speak. How old is that idea? Well, based on this piece of ancient Chimu technology, it must be around 1200. This ancient ancestor of the telephone was discovered a few years ago in the ruins of Chanchan, Peru. It's the only ancient phone-like artifact ever found in the region, and is all the more amazing because it was made by a culture that didn't even have a written language. The device is made from two 4-inch gourd cups connected by a 75-foot-long length of cotton twine. It was likely used to enable communication between neighbors, or perhaps from one end of a large building to another. Archaeologists aren't currently sure whether it was used by the ruling elite or whether it was a mere child's toy. And they're also a little baffled by the fact they've never found another artifact like it. The Shigir idol is an incredible ancient artifact. The tall idol, which depicts 7 different human faces and is covered in hieroglyphics, is 11,000 years old. That makes it 3 times older than the pyramids of Egypt. Experts have long wondered how it was made, and a study carried out in mid-2020 raised an intriguing possibility. It's now thought that it might have been carved out of a beaver's jaw, with the teeth of the creature still attached. The strange object was discovered in a peat bog by gold miners in 1890 as they went digging for their fortune in the Ural Mountains. It's an incredible 17 feet tall and appears to have been polished, chiseled, and covered with markings that still haven't been translated to this day. That means there's a message on the idol from people living in the Mesolithic era, and we have no idea what it says. Only one of its 7 faces is 3-dimensional, so it's likely that the 3D face has special significance. But sadly, we have no idea what that significance might be. There was a time when we thought we understood the so-called Nebra sky disk. Experts were pretty sure that it was around 3,600 years old and depicted the sun, a crescent moon, and the stars that make up the Pleiades. As of September 2020, all those theories are out of the window. 2 experts from Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany, have concluded that it's actually 1,000 years younger than has always been believed, and is therefore a relic of the Iron Age. Changing the age of the artifact means that the astronomical assumptions made about what it depicts must also now be considered obsolete. There are also new questions about where the artifact came from. It was discovered in 1999 in Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, but the copper used in its construction is from Austria, and the gold and bronze both come from Cornwall in England. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make it, using materials gathered from far and wide. But if we're wrong about its age by 1,000 years, then we have to accept that the stars on it are unlikely to represent the Pleiades. What might they represent instead? Unfortunately, we have no idea at the moment. Son Doong Cave in Vietnam is one of the most incredible wonders you'll ever find in nature. It's over 7 miles long, 700 feet wide, and 500 feet high. Inside the cave, you'll find a self-contained ecosystem, including a river and a jungle. It's the largest cave in the world, and also the most remarkable. It's also where you'll find these strange stone formations, which might be a little uncomfortable to look at for anybody who has trypophobia. Scientists can't agree on whether these formations occurred naturally or whether they were put together manually by people living in the caves hundreds or perhaps even thousands of years ago. Amazingly, nobody other than a few people who live close to it was even aware that Son Doong existed at all, until a team of British explorers performed a full survey in 2009. The smaller piles of rocks might be cave pearls, formed by water dripping from the cave ceiling and turning into small balls of mineral deposits. Even if that explains how they were formed, though, it doesn't answer the question of whether they formed this pattern naturally. Here's a discovery that might make you a little queasy. In November 2019, the remains of 2 infants were found inside a burial mound hidden away on the mountainous coast of Ecuador. They were laid to rest approximately 2,100 years ago. Both of the infants were wearing helmets when they were discovered, which is unusual in itself. That isn't the disturbing part, though. When experts examined them more closely, they realized that the helmets were made from the skulls of other deceased infants. Based on the placement of the bones, it seems that the grisly helmets were added posthumously and carefully arranged so they'd cover every part of the infant's head apart from their faces. This burial practice has never been observed anywhere else in the world, and we can't even begin to imagine why anyone would ever have done such a thing. There's a theory that the infants might have perished during the eruption of a nearby volcano, and so their deaths might have been treated with more reverence than normal. But the meaning of surrounding one dead child with the remains of another is lost on us. Human beings have been feeding babies milk in bottles for as long as anyone can remember, but the practice goes back further than most people imagine. In fact, according to research that was first published in September 2019, it's been happening in Europe for more than 7,000 years. A study has been performed on bottles found in southern Germany and has confirmed that they once contained animal milk. That suggests that, just as is the case today, animal milk in bottles were used to wean babies off breast milk as they grew. This is an important milestone in human development. It's known that back when humans were little more than hunter-gatherers, they breastfed their children for an average of 5 years. But breastfeeding suppresses fertility. Weaning children off breast milk earlier means that babies can be made faster, which in turn allows populations to grow at a quicker rate. Whilst it's not possible to say exactly what kind of animal provided the milk in these German bottles, experts are fairly confident that it came from either cows, sheep, or goats. There would have been risks, though, as the milk would have been unpasteurized. It would be likely to contain harmful bacteria. No wonder infant mortality rates were so high back then. The ancient Egyptians appeared to be so much more advanced than the civilizations around them that historians have often wondered if they had access to forms of technology that nobody else did, technology that's now been forgotten. Ancient Egyptian stonework is especially problematic from a historical point of view because so much of it is made from granite, basalt, diorite, and quartzite, materials that would be difficult to cut even if we assume that iron tools were used to cut them. We can't make that assumption, though, because iron tools didn't exist in Egypt until around 2,700 years ago, which raises the question of how the older stone-cut monuments could possibly have been created. Prior to the arrival of iron tools, Egyptian workers would have worked with tools made from bronze, and bronze isn't firm enough to cut stone like this. There's no way that the unfinished obelisk in Aswan could have been cut with bronze tools, for example, and nor could the infamous granite boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara. The only sensible conclusion we can reach is that the Egyptians developed an alternative method for cutting stone, using a different form of technology. But scientists are reluctant to make that conclusion because they find it too hard to explain. When Francis Tully discovered a strange fossil in Mason Creek, Illinois, US during the 1950s, it was the beginning of a mystery that continues to this day. Francis couldn't identify the fossilized creature he'd found, nor could any of his peers. They took the fossil to a series of museums, but none of them could help either. As nobody could come up with an accurate name for the enigmatic creature, it's become known as Tully's monster. It's the only example of its kind that's ever been found. The body of the beast is a little like a slug's, but it has claws where we'd normally expect a slug's mouth to be. Its eyes protrude away from its body on stalks, but the eyes contain melanosomes, which are usually found in creatures like squid and octopuses. Scientists can't even agree on whether it had a spine or not. For every researcher who claims to be able to prove it was an invertebrate, you'll find another who swears it's a vertebrate. It's 300 million years old, and so perhaps identifying it and solving the mystery We'll have to wait until someone develops time travel. While we're on the topic of bizarre fossils, here's another one that's been studied by experts from Herefordshire in the UK and given a very unusual name. The 430 million year old fossil has been studied using advanced scanning and 3D reconstruction techniques that have allowed scientists to gain a clear picture of what it looked like when it was alive. After looking at the images, the scientists named it Solacina Cthulhu, with the Cthulhu part of the name being a tribute to the works of H.P. Lovecraft. It's not hard to see why the name was chosen. The creature's resemblance to the monsters from Lovecraft's Cthulhu universe is striking. The main part of its body is only 1.5 inches wide, but its long tentacles would have allowed it to crawl far and wide across the sea floor, sucking up food as it went. It's thought to be a very early ancestor of modern sea cucumbers, including the sea pig. Discoveries like this remind us that the bottom of the sea is every bit as strange and alien as we often believe other planets to be. Most people have heard of the Roswell UFO conspiracy theory, but far fewer people have heard of its British equivalent, the Silpho-Moore UFO. Supporters of the conspiracy theory believe that a tiny alien spacecraft crash-landed on Silpho-Moore, Scarborough, England, in November 1957. It has long been claimed that the British Museum gathered up all the evidence of the crash and hid it, but most people believed there was nothing to the tale until fragments of the allegedly crashed spaceship were found by archivists in 2018. Most of the pieces of the shattered craft appear to be made of thin strips of copper, all of which are covered in hieroglyphics, although a study carried out at Manchester University has revealed the presence of lead, and also pointed out that the copper is unusually pure. UFOologist Philip Longbottom claims to have translated the hieroglyphs and says they're a message from an alien named Ulo, who warns the human race that it must improve or disappear, although the basis for Philip's translation remains unknown. Scientists claim that the object is a hoax, but if it is a hoax, why was it hidden by a museum for more than half a century? The idea of a nun being possessed by evil spirits and then writing letters in code sounds like the basis of a horror movie. But did it happen for real in the 17th century? We might never know for sure, but a lot of people think it did. This letter, made up of bizarre markings and symbols, was apparently written by Sister Maria Crocifissa della Concisione in a monastery in Italy on August 11, 1676. It was apparently found in her hand when she woke up from a fainting spell in her room, and she had no recollection of writing it. She was unable to translate the script, and nor could anybody else, until a team from Sicily's Ludum Science Center ran it through a code-cracking algorithm they found on the internet in 2017. It's now been fully translated, and it appears to be every bit as satanic as the nun feared it might be. The letter says that God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit were invented by man, that no mortal can be freed by God, and that the path to the river Styx is inevitable. It seems unlikely that a humble 17th century nun would have been able to create the letter as a hoax because of the complexity of the code. But what other explanation do we have? To the untrained eye, our next artifact might look like nothing more than a large stone disk in Volgograd, Russia. To the UFO hunters who found it in 2015, though, it's a crashed, fossilized alien spaceship that fell to Earth over 1 million years ago. That sounds a little far-fetched, but perhaps there's something to it. The disk contains wolfram, a sort of metal tungsten that's unlikely to occur naturally, but is frequently used in military technology. If you were going to make a flying saucer, it would be a good choice of building material. Another point that goes in favor of those who believe it might have extraterrestrial origins is the fact that the 16-foot wide disk has been taken away from where it was found and placed inside the Zhirinovsky Museum. If it were nothing more interesting than a long, flat, disc-shaped rock, why would a museum have any interest in it? We have to be realistic and say it's highly unlikely that aliens crash-landed on our planet 1 million years ago. But the museum could squash this conspiracy theory immediately if they'd issue a statement and explain why they've taken the artifact for safekeeping. They've never done that, and so the rumors persist. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!